Some of these hay balers are older than your grandparents, and farmers would still fight you for them. One of them baled hay straight through World War II. One rolls hay so tight it survives sitting out in the rain. And the machine at number 1, it quietly changed farming forever, yet almost nobody remembers its name. These are 10 forgotten balers that farmers today still absolutely refuse to give up. Number 10. Minneapolis-Moline Bale-O-Matic. Let's kick things off with a machine painted in that unmistakable prairie gold color that Minneapolis-Moline fans still get misty-eyed over. The Bale-O-Matic ran in production from 1945 all the way to 1953, which puts it right at the front of the pack. Think about the timing here. Most farmers in the mid-1940s were still using stationary hay presses, big bolted-down machines that you had to haul the hay to. You'd pitch the crop in by hand, someone would poke wires through by hand, and it was slow, dusty, back-breaking work that took a whole crew. The Bale-O-Matic was part of that first wave of machines that flipped the entire process on its head. Instead of bringing the hay to the baler, you brought the baler to the hay. It rode through the field, picked the crop up out of the windrow, packed it into a chamber, and tied the bale automatically. What used to take a small army now took one person on a tractor. So why do old-timers still swear by it? Because Minneapolis-Moline built things like tanks. Was famous for over-engineering their equipment, and the Bale-O-Matic was no exception. These machines were heavy, simple, and stubbornly reliable. There's no computer to fail, no sensor to short out, just chains, gears, and a knotter that either works or gets a firm smack with a wrench until it does. Today, the Bale-O-Matic is genuinely rare. Minneapolis-Moline eventually got swallowed up in a series of company mergers, and their equipment faded from the fields long before the big names did. But drive through farm country in the upper Midwest and you'll still find one sitting under a shed roof, cleaned up and ready to make a few bales for a tractor show or a small hay patch. For collectors, finding a running Bale-O-Matic is like finding buried treasure, a working piece of the exact moment baling changed forever. Number 9. New Holland Model 76. Now we get to a machine that a lot of farmers over 70 remember, with a mix of love and pure aggravation, the New Holland Model 76. Here's a fact that shows you just how big this thing was. In 1946 alone, New Holland cranked out 4,700 Model 76 balers, and the factory was tooling up to build nearly 3 times that many by 1948. In an era when a lot of farms were still baling by hand, that is a staggering number of machines going out the door. The 76 used an overhead plunger, meaning the hay was fed into the top of the bale chamber and packed down from above, the same basic idea as those old stationary hay presses. What made it special was the canvas curtain system it used to elevate the hay up into the chamber, instead of the spring finger setup New Holland would switch to on later models. Now here's where the love-hate part comes in. Ask anyone who grew up around a Model 76 and you'll hear the same story. The kid of the family always got stuck with pitchfork duty. Somebody had to walk alongside the baler and help feed that canvas elevator when it started to bog down. And you had to keep one eye locked on the knotter, watching for any missed ties. Catch a bad tie early and you could retie it fast. Miss it and you had an exploded bale of loose hay spread across the field. So it wasn't glamorous, and it definitely wasn't easy. But the Model 76 did something almost magical for its time. It took a job that needed a whole crew and made it possible for a single family to bring in their own hay crop. Farmers still swear by it because it represents grit. It's a machine that demanded you pay attention, that made you part of the operation. And when families restore one today, they're not just fixing a baler, they're restoring the memory of hot summers, aching backs, and a father, a mother and their kids all working the same field together. Number 8. International Harvester McCormick 45. You cannot make an honest list of legendary balers and leave off the big red machines from International Harvester. And the one farmers name over and over is the McCormick 45. The IH-45 was one of the best-selling early automatic balers ever built, right up there in the top tier with the New Holland and John Deere models we'll get to in a minute. It rolled through fields all across America during the 1950s, and it earned its reputation the hard way, by just refusing to quit. Here's a detail hardcore collectors love. A lot of these early 45s were powered by their own onboard engine rather than relying only on the tractor's power takeoff shaft. One of the classic power plants you'll find bolted to an IH-45 is a 2-cylinder Wisconsin THD engine, an air-cooled workhorse that has an almost cult following of its own. That little engine would putt-putt away all day long, driving the baler's mechanism while the tractor just did the pulling. Why does that matter? Because it meant the baler didn't rob power from your tractor, and it meant that even a smaller, older tractor could pull a full-size baler through heavy hay. For a farmer on a budget, which was just about everybody, that was a huge deal. The IH-45 made a solid, consistent bale and had that international harvester build quality that farmers trusted with their livelihood. These machines were designed to be worked hard for years, and they were. Today, the IH-45 has a devoted following. Restorers love pairing it behind a farm-all tractor in matching red, and the sound of that old Wisconsin engine firing up at a farm show still turns heads. Parts can get tricky, but the design is so mechanically simple that a patient person with a manual and a set of wrenches can bring one back to life. Farmers who cut their teeth on a 45 will tell you flat out, they don't build them that tough anymore. Number 7. New Holland 273 Hayliner. By the time we hit the late 1960s, hay baling had gotten a serious upgrade, and one machine sits at the heart of that new generation, the New Holland 273 Hayliner. The 273 ran in production from 1968 all the way to 1977, and it was part of the streamlined, lower-profile balers that gave New Holland their now classic look, that red body with the yellow accents that so many people picture the second you say the words New Holland baler. But the 273 wasn't just a pretty face. This generation ditched the old auger feed and used a sweeping tine setup, often called the super sweep feed, to move the crop from the pickup into the bale chamber. That change made the machine feed smoother and handle bigger, heavier windrows without choking. And critically, the 273 ran off the tractor's power takeoff shaft instead of carrying its own heavy onboard engine, which made the whole machine lighter and simpler. With its 14 by 18-inch bale chamber, the 273 could pump out clean, well-shaped bales in serious volume. This is the machine a lot of full-time hay farmers actually relied on to make their living, cutting thousands of bales a season year after year. And here's the thing that makes farmers still swear by it today. The 273 hits a sweet spot. It's old enough to be dead simple to work on, with no electronics to baffle you, but new enough that it's genuinely capable and fast. Parts are still floating around, mechanics still know these machines inside and out, and a well-maintained 273 will still fill a hay wagon as fast as you can stack it. Go on any farm marketplace today and you'll see 273s changing hands constantly, often for a few $1,000s to hobby farmers and folks running smaller operations who want a proven, honest baler. It's not fancy, it doesn't need to be. It just works, and it's been working for over 50 years. Number 6. New Holland Super 77. Let's rewind a bit and talk about a machine that quietly set the standard everyone else had to chase, the New Holland Super 77. The Super 77 ran from 1953 to 1957, and it landed right at a turning point in baling history. See, the earliest balers often used wire to tie their bales, which was a nasty fiddly job. But by the early 1950s, twine had taken over as the tying material of choice, and the Super 77 was built around that twine tie system that farmers had come to prefer. Here's the engineering upgrade that made the Super 77 so beloved. On older balers, the packing plunger, the part that slams back and forth to compress the hay, rode on wooden slides. Wood wears out, it swells, it splinters, it needs constant attention. The Super 77 replaced those wooden slides by running the plunger on rollers instead. That one change made the machine smoother, more durable, and far less finicky. And the payoff was in the bale itself. The Super 77 was famous for making large, well-shaped bales out of just about any size windrow you fed it. Whether you had a thin, patchy strip of hay or a thick, heavy one, the Super 77 would take it and spit out a proper, consistent bale. For a farmer, consistency is everything. It means bales that stack neatly, weigh the same, and don't fall apart when you toss them onto the wagon. The Super 77 was so good that it became one of the top-selling balers of its whole era, and New Holland even started shipping it across the Atlantic to farmers in Britain in 1956. Farmers still swear by the Super 77 because it's the machine where New Holland really figured out the formula. It's the ancestor of the balers that would dominate hayfields for the next half-century. Restore one today and you're holding a genuine piece of the turning point, the moment the small square baler grew up. Number 5. John Deere 336. Halfway to number 1, and it's time for a machine that inspires the kind of loyalty John Deere fans are famous for, the John Deere 336. The 336 was built through the 1970s. The production run covered roughly 1971 to 1980, and it earned a reputation as one of the most bulletproof small square balers ever made. Ask farmers who ran both, and you'll hear a story that comes up again and again. Guys who switched from a competitor's baler to a Deere 336 said they'd never switch back, because for about the same money, the green machine simply left the others in the dust. The 336 made a standard 14 by 18-inch bale, with a plunger running around 80 strokes a minute, packing hay hard and fast. You could get it as a twine tie machine, which was by far the most common, and many were fitted with a bale thrower, that clever kicker attachment on the back that flings the finished bale up into a trailing wagon, so you don't even have to stop and stack by hand. But the real secret to the 336's legend is two words: parts availability. Even today, decades after the last one rolled off the line, you can still get parts for a John Deere 336 through Deere dealers and aftermarket suppliers. That is enormous. A baler is only as useful as your ability to fix it in the middle of hay season, and the 336 is famously easy to keep alive. That's why you'll still see 336s working real hay right now, not just sitting in museums, but out in the field, filling barns. Small farmers, cattle ranchers and horse owners hunt these things down specifically because a good one is a lifetime machine. Prices have actually climbed for clean, well-shedded examples because demand never went away. When a 50-year-old baler is worth more today than it was 20 years ago, that tells you everything. Farmers swear by the 336 because it does one job, does it perfectly, and does it forever. Number 4. New Holland Super Hayliner 68. Now we get to a machine whose very name became legend. When someone says the old reliable 68, farm folks everywhere know exactly what they mean: the New Holland Super Hayliner 68. The Hayliner name launched in 1959, with the Hayliner 68 and the Super Hayliner 68 joining the lineup, and the Super 68 model specifically was built in that 1958 to 1960 window. That Hayliner badge would go on to grace New Holland balers for decades, but the 68 is where the magic started. What made it special? For one, it was offered with options that were pretty advanced for the time, including a diesel engine option in some markets, a 16 horsepower Enfield diesel that could power the baler independently. But most farmers ran the power takeoff version, driven straight off the tractor. Here's the real reason it made this list though. The Super Hayliner 68 is one of the most durable balers ever put into a field, and the proof is that they are still baling hay today. There are stories all over farm country of a 68 that a grandfather bought new in 1960, that missed a tie on the first bale of every season and then never missed another one all summer, and that stayed in the family for decades. There are folks who'll pull a 68 out of the barn that's been sitting for years, oil it up, and run 40+ perfect bales through it on the first try. That's the thing about the 68, it forgives. It's simple enough that a determined owner can rebuild the whole thing with a manual and basic tools right down to the knotters and pickup fingers, and when it's tuned right, it just keeps going. For a small operation making a few hundred to a couple thousand bales a year, a good Super Hayliner 68 is honestly all you need. It's the definition of a machine that earns its keep. Farmers don't just use the 68, they trust it. And in farming, trust is the highest praise a machine can get. Number 3. Allis-Chalmers Roto-Baler. Alright, number 3 is where things get wild. Because this machine didn't just bale hay, it invented an entire idea we still use today. Meet the Allis-Chalmers Roto-Baler. Look around any field today and you'll see those big round bales dotting the landscape. Well, the Roto-Baler is the granddaddy of every single one of them. It was the first successfully mass-produced round baler in history. Here's the incredible backstory. Allis-Chalmers didn't actually invent the round bale concept. Back in 1910, a Nebraska farmer named Lubin patented a machine that rolled hay into a round bundle. In 1940, Allis-Chalmers bought the rights to his idea, put their engineers to work refining it, and by 1947 they were rolling the Roto-Baler out to farmers. And they sold. Over the machine's lifetime, Allis-Chalmers built an estimated 78,700 Roto-Balers, an astonishing number for something so far ahead of its time. The main production run went from 1947 all the way to 1960. And it was such a beloved design that Allis-Chalmers actually brought it back for a second run from 1972 to 1974. The Roto-Baler had genius advantages. It wrapped its round bales with twine rather than tying them with a knotter. In fact, these machines had no knotters at all. Those round bales shed rainwater, so a farmer could leave them sitting in the field and haul them to the barn whenever he got the chance, and cattle loved the rolled hay. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The Roto-Baler was, in the words of the people who ran it, as delicate to operate as a sewing machine. It's a maze of springs, latches, bearings, chains, and belts, and if even one piece is out of tune, the whole thing quits. The hay had to be bone dry, and every season started with a careful break-in ritual. That difficulty is exactly why the ones still running are so treasured. A farmer who can keep a Roto-Baler humming has real mechanical skill, and he's operating the machine that started the round bale revolution. Number 2. John Deere 14T. We're down to number 2, and this is the machine that put a green baler in barns all across the country, the John Deere 14T. The 14T ran through the 1950s and into the early 60s. Production is generally pegged from the mid-1950s to 1961, and it holds a special place in history as the first twine-tie baler John Deere ever built. That was a big deal. Twine was cleaner, safer, and easier to handle than wire, and the 14T brought Deere's famous engineering to the format farmers wanted. Now here's the number that explains why the 14T became a legend. By automatically tying its bales with twine and launching them into a wagon trailing behind, the 14T reportedly eliminated at least 50% of the labor that baling used to require. Think about what that meant to a family farm. Cut your hay labor in half, and suddenly one operation could handle far more acres, or the same acres in half the time. That's not a convenience, that's a transformation. Like a lot of these early balers, the 14T could be run with its own onboard engine, and you'll often find one with that same trusty two-cylinder Wisconsin THD power plant bolted on, chugging away in the field. It made a tidy 14 by 18-inch bale, and it made it well. But the real reason the 14T sits this high on the list is simple: staying power. These balers were built so well that an enormous number of them are still in use today, more than 60 years after they were made. Farmers keep them as reliable backups, hobby farmers use them as their main baler, and Deere fans hunt them down out of pure loyalty. There's a certain magic to the shape of a 14T bale too. Old-timers rave about how nicely the bale comes out the back of that machine. It's slow by modern standards, sure, but slow and dependable beats fast and broken every single day of hay season. The 14T earned Deere a place in the baler world it has never given up. Number 1. New Holland Model 73 Automaton. And here it is, number 1, the machine that started it all, the one almost nobody remembers by name, even though it changed farming forever. This is the New Holland Model 73, better known as the Automaton. Built from 1940 to 1943, the Automaton was the first self-tying pickup-type baler to take hay baling out into the field. Before this machine, baling meant hauling your crop to a stationary press and tying bales by hand with a crew of workers. The Automaton did away with all of it. It picked the hay up out of the windrow and tied the bale automatically, all on the move. Everything on this entire list traces back to this one machine. The specs are beautiful in their simplicity. It used twine to automatically tie bales measuring 16 by 18 inches, weighing between 40 and 80 pounds, much lighter than the heavy wire-tied bales of the past. It was powered by a 20-horsepower Wisconsin air-cooled 4-cylinder engine, and it could bale 3 to 6 tons of hay per hour. One machine, one operator, tons of hay. But here's the part that gives me chills. The timing of this machine was history itself. It arrived right as World War II pulled millions of young men off the farms and into the armed forces. Suddenly there was almost no farm labor left. And because the Automaton needed so little manpower to run, it let the women and kids of the family bring in the hay crop while the men were away at war. It was so important to the war effort that New Holland received a special government allocation of steel, scarce, rationed, precious wartime steel, just to keep building these balers. That's how vital feeding the country was. The Automaton grew out of the work of a Pennsylvania farmer named Ed Nolt, who built his self-tying baler in a small shop before New Holland took the design nationwide. And from that one machine, an entire industry was born. So that's number 1. A forgotten baler that fed a nation through its darkest hour and quietly launched every baler that came after it. So which one surprised you the most? Did your family run one of these? Drop it in the comments, I read them all. And if you love this kind of forgotten farm history, hit subscribe, because there's a whole lot more old iron where this came from.